Okay. Good morning still, everyone. My name is Arisa, and I am still most definitely an alcoholic. And I am really thrilled to be with you guys. It's been so much fun. Out of the way. We've been going just a little bit out of order, but that's because of when we got here and trying to go with the flow of the day, right? So having talked about when we retire at night last night in the nightly review, and upon awakening this morning, it seemed to me, they gave me right of decision, so I got to decide, to talk about step 10, and my cute little title is Finding Your Glasses with Step 10. So one of my grand sponsors, I've buried 5 sponsors over the years, so I've been lucky to have some incredible people guide me in Alcoholics Anonymous over the years, and one of my grand sponsors was Chuck C. And if you haven't heard the recordings, called A New Pair of Glasses, it's been turned into a book. He did not write a book. I want to be really clear about that. He did not write a book. It's a retreat like this that got transcribed. So the book, A New Pair of Glasses, says it's by him, but he never actually wrote a book. They transcribed it. You can find the recordings. They're a little scratchy. People are like, oh, he's hard to understand. But he was an incredible person, and he talks a lot. I mean, the whole title is A New Pair of Glasses. The whole point is, how do we see things differently, right? Years ago, one of my pet peeves with my husband is, especially in the shower and the sink, it's disgusting. Yeah. I mean, what is up with not rinsing the sink? He shaves, and there's all this and we didn't used to have 2 sinks, right? Never mind in the shower where there's please, just gross. No. And what, it tells me I'm the maid. Because that's assuming malice. That's how I roll. I mean, I'm going to assume that's my first thought. It dawned on me, after having written inventory on this a few times, my husband wears glasses, but he does not wear his glasses in the shower or when he's shaving. He can't see it. Literally, can't see it. And it's funny, I never told him. And he overheard me saying this on the Big Book workshop, I don't know, a couple months ago. And he was kind of horrified, but he's like, yeah, I never thought to even look because, he doesn't have his glasses on. And they're not even near the sink. So how do you know what you don't know? That's what my sponsor used to say. How do you know what you don't know? How do you solve a problem if you think, if you've got the wrong problem, if you think that, you've got a pulled muscle, but you actually broke a titanium rod, physical therapy is not going to help, right? So you got to identify the problem before you can get to the right solution. And step 10, I talked a little bit about last night because in order to go into 11, so I talked about it more last night than I intended to. But the whole point is that if I want to be able to see you clearly, I have to be willing to see me differently. I have to get to I don't know. When I get to I don't know, I'm teachable. When I think I know something, I get more trouble from what I think I know that turns out to not be so than when I don't know something. Because, when you go forward, sure, I'm sure that God gave me crappy parents. I'm never going to trust that guy. I'm not. But when I start to look around and go, well, those people have a God that they seem to think is kind and loving. It took me 3 years of getting to a point where I began to feel like God might even care about me a little bit. I told somebody at breakfast, I was at 2.5 years sober, something like that, and things started, I'm thinking maybe this God thing, maybe, you know why, right? Because I met him. You know, life is starting to, I'm getting what I want. And there's this, my sister's been trying to set me up with this guy, and I said no. I mean, he lives in New York. I live in Houston. Why would I say yes? So for several years, I'm saying no. Now I'm thinking about going to graduate school in New York, and I'm up there looking at schools and whatever, and he asks me out, and I go out with him. And I really like him. And we're on a rocket ship towards happily ever after. You know, I've already gotten the diamond and emerald necklace for Christmas, and I just started dating him in like November, you know. I mean, he's talking marriage and the whole 9 yards, and I'm like, I never thought I would get married or have kids or any of that. And he really is a really nice guy, and he sings beautifully, he's a good dancer, he's a lot of fun, he's got a great job, he's in New York. I mean, right? I mean, everything's aligning. See, maybe finally this AA thing is working, right? Well, that went on for a few months, and then one day he called out of the blue. In the spring, I was about to go up for a family wedding with him. Been to a few of them already. He's also from the Boston area. Evidently, God was really trying to get me to Boston. And I'd been to a couple of family weddings. So I'd left a bunch of stuff at his house, like my grandmother's pearls and whatever. And I'm supposed to go see him. He calls just before I leave, and he says, I can't do this anymore. And I said, what? And he said, I can't stand the thought that you might drink again. Because his mom was a really bad alcoholic. And she did some really bad things to him growing up. And she continued to, she was in and out of AA, in and out of AA, in and out of AA, in and out of AA. DWIs all over the place. I mean, she was a heartbreak and a half. And when he said that, the difference is that I felt like, you know, in The Grinch, you know, his heart grew 3 sizes that day. I realized that I had learned something about love, because I knew that he really probably wouldn't ever sleep through the night if we got married. That he would never be okay knowing that I am an alcoholic. Because you can't say, I will never drink again. Because once a pickle, never a cucumber. I mean, that's it. I've got today, and I need to stay in action and more action. I have had too many friends go out. The one in particular that I think of often, who is now at the big meeting in the sky, he was sober for 15 years, and he drank, and he managed to get back. And when he celebrated his next 15th anniversary, it was a big deal. And he did die sober. But that is rare. It is rare for that to happen. And when he said it, I mean, it was like my heart was just ripped. I mean, I really thought this was where God wanted me to go. I mean, and he's in New York, and I'm about to move to New York. And I mean, so I just asked him to send me my grandmother's pearls. That's really all I, you know. And he kept telling me, literally, like, they're in the mail. I've FedExed them to. He didn't. He didn't. I'm going up to New York to look for a place to live. My sister is in New York. She worked with him. And that was, like I said, she kept trying to set me up with him. And so I'm going to stay with her while I'm looking for a place to live for graduate school. And she calls me and she says, I have something to tell you. And I said, who is she? And she said, me. And they were married a year later. And I got to be a bridesmaid in their wedding. There was a lot of inventory in between here and there, to put it mildly. And nobody has ever on that side. I've had to make amends to them. Because here's the truth. I had said no for years. I literally said to my sister once, I think you should go out with him. I knew. I knew. I didn't want to know when I met him. I didn't want to know. But I knew. And that's the reality. What I learned in inventory is, you see, I like to take the position of prosecutor, like in the courtroom. And it is time for me to put down my clipboard and go to the other side of the room and become the lawyer for the defense. What are they doing right? The truth is, they belong together. I mean, they really do, in so many ways. And there's a lot more to that. But I also really don't think they ever would have dated if I hadn't ended up in the middle. Because she was like church and state. We worked together. No way ever. Not happening. Until all of a sudden it looked like I might happen. And because she was like this, yeah, I was second pick. Let's be honest. But what I learned is that my husband today wouldn't have even been possible if that hadn't happened. I really needed my heart to be broken in a certain way. I had not been very kind with other people's hearts often. If you asked me out, I would say yes, because I didn't know how to say no. I ended up dating people for years often that I didn't even like, because I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to walk away. And I've never treated somebody the same way again. I learned that people's hearts matter, right? It's really that 10th step that has given me this incredible life and this perspective. But when this first happened, and I didn't know about my sister, I'm in meetings, and I was crushed. And I felt like somebody was using my sobriety against me. And yet at the same time, I also knew it was true that he would probably never sleep through the night if he was married to someone he thought would turn into his mother, could turn into his mother. And I had these two things, and I got to decide, which one am I going to feed? Which one am I going to feed? And I went to meetings, and I told them, I don't want to be an alcoholic. I don't want to be an alcoholic, but I do not want to drink. And I do believe I am an alcoholic. And I'm so glad that I got to go through that, because there were people in my life who would say things to me afterwards. I went out with a couple of guys who said things like, I don't know why you hang out with those freaks. I do, because I am one. I need to be here. And the 10th step gets a lot of attention in some ways and not enough in others. As we experienced last night, many people think the nightly review is the 10th step. It's inventory is what it is. And the 11th, the way I like to look at it is, there was a news article when my daughter was an infant. And this family had gone to the zoo. And they let their kids run around the zoo. It wasn't the Boston Zoo. I can't remember which zoo it was. And somehow, the little girl got in the lion's cage. And obviously she died. The lion attacked her. And I remember thinking, what kind of an irresponsible parent, you know? But here's the thing. God only comes where God is invited. And I need to be holding God's hand. And I know it's a little anthropomorphic, and not everybody, wants a God that's like concrete, but I like the image. I like the image that God's hand is there for me to hold, the way I held my kids' hands when they learned to cross the street. But he's just putting his hand there, and if I want it, I get to hold that hand and have that protection. And if I'm not holding God's hand, I just want to pet the pretty kitty. And I get myself into a lot of trouble. When I'm not holding God's hands, I'm going to try to marry my brother-in-law. It's a little nuts. But I mean, anybody looking at this from a little bit of distance, like I said, I knew I shouldn't have been going out with him. He was there. It looked great. Why not? Oh, God, thank God. You have to thank God for the bullets you dodge. So when finding my glasses, I say that because when I woke up from my second back surgery, all of a sudden I couldn't see normally. And they told me, they said that the surgery, basically, often the eyesight is one of the first things that gets stressed. I didn't know that. I was like, what happened? I'm like, so all of a sudden I need glasses. And used to be I just needed big print. Now it's getting worse. But I can get better glasses. I can get better and better glasses. I can take steps to see the world clearly. I can find the button to wash the windshield. I don't have to look through the mud and the crap anymore. I don't have to be taking your inventory and proof. See, I needed to take your inventory for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones is it was the only way I knew how to walk away. I didn't know, when you've got the kind of background that I have, and people are telling you, literally, even up until her death, my mother told me that she mattered more than I did. And when you've got everybody telling you that, it's hard to not put yourself in a position to be harmed. But learning that God doesn't have stepchildren, when it says in the nightly review, were we kind and loving towards all, that means me too. And that was a hard one because, again, I said like before, we're not supposed to pray for ourselves. So I'm all screwed up on this. Except where it bears on our usefulness to others. How can I best serve thee? That's what the 10th step talks a lot about. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. And there are lots of things that I can do, but what can I do in this moment? What's the best option? And then there's only one. And sometimes you may get it wrong. So when we come to step 10 on page 84, this thought, the thought of amends, right, brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. So practice is what this is really all about, right? We're going to, let me read just the rest of it, may as well. Any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. To continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when, not if, these crop up. Prayer, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. What an order. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. Now try getting these from alcohol. 9th step promises, I can get from alcohol. 10th step promises, you can't get from alcohol. If tempted, we recoil as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we find that this has happened automatically. We will see our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We're not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And then a bunch of warnings. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry this vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Like I said, I call that the 10-step mantra. It's also a prayer. These are thoughts which must, warning direction, go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we want. It is the proper use of the will. And that's why I call them spiritual exercises. That's why I've got to make sure I am practicing every day. I have a lot of friends who are musicians and singers, and they practice the scales. I have a friend she's been on the cover of Opera News, and she still sings the scales. I have to have this core here. I need to be practicing these principles. So when I start talking about, it says, we have to have the proper attitude. We have to work at it, right? The whole idea is this attitude adjustment, which is a posture that we take, a disposition, right? That God loves me, even if I'm screwing up, right? That it's not the try harder, try harder, do better. It is, I have to have this freedom. I need to let God do this work for me. Growing up on the Gulf, the Gulf Stream is one of the strongest riptides in the world. And the first thing they teach you is if you get caught in the riptide, you do not fight it. You do not try to swim to shore. You will die if you do. You know what you do? You float. You cease fighting. And it may take you a ways. It may take you even a couple of miles. But at some point, it'll release you and you will be able to get to shore. But if you struggle, you'll probably die. You'll wear yourself out. So it's this sense of knowing that God's got me. How do I do that? So when I did my nightly review last night, I'm laying in bed, I'm listening to the rain, and I literally felt like I am laying in the palm of God's hand. That's what I'm trying to get. That's what the 10th step is helping me. When life doesn't feel like that, when I feel like I need to defend myself, there's a problem. And what's really great is that as time has gone on, the 10th step, like I said last night, it started with clean up on aisle 7, I have made a mess again. And that was progress because I didn't see when I was making messes. But today, I don't make a lot of obvious messes anymore. That doesn't mean I'm not making mistakes and I'm not, it's harder to, they're not so obvious. They're not so glaring. I'm trying to do, the best that I can, and most of the time that looks pretty good. But what's going on in here is a whole nother matter. The stage characters are still there. They're still talking, right? And I can make a decision in the morning to get divorced from self-pity, but by the time it's raining outside and I feel like I've got a knife in underneath my rib cage, never mind my back, I've got a headache going on, like, oh, really? Kind and loving towards all. Let's exit stage left. Let's just go take care of me. And how's that going to work out? You know what's going to work? All I'm going to be thinking, alcohol. Anybody know the alcoholic theme song besides Shelley? Me, 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 me. It's all about me. And that is trouble. It's trouble. Okay, you know what the Al-Anon theme song is, though, right? May as well face it, you're addicted to love. And we have to laugh. It's good medicine. So when I talk about step 10, right? I have to have this surety. The longer I've stayed, this surety that God wants me happy, joyous, and free. That's the foundation of it. It is not about, my religious background is I'm Lutheran. Missouri Synod, if you know what that means we don't let other Lutherans go to communion because you have to be the right kind of Lutheran even, okay? And we feel really sorry for all the Catholics because they're going to hell, and all the other Lutherans are too. Never mind everybody else. They're a little rigid, and they're very sexist, and whatever. But some people love them. I didn't. I wanted to be a minister when I was a little girl, and then I was informed that I wasn't allowed to because I was a woman, and that was that, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, even the Jews get to have, okay, whatever. But these preconceived notions that I have, they have to go out the window. Am I willing to find the God of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and just say, you know what, some of that stuff may work and some of it may not. I still love some of those hymns. I remember sitting in church and feeling loved as a very, very little girl. It was like the only safe place in the whole world. So I can understand why maybe, but, but I don't believe in that kind of condemnation. I don't believe that comes from God. I don't believe in someone saying, you got God's name wrong, so you're going to hell. I just can't get on board with even Jesus going, yeah, you got my name wrong, so, fry. It's hard for me to get on board with that being love. And I'm not saying that I'm not speaking against Christianity. Please don't misunderstand. Because people ask me a lot, am I Christian? I'm like, yeah, and I think I qualify for a lot of religions. I do. Because my beliefs are not in conflict with. They're very much in alignment with so many. I try to be quick to see where religious people are right. Some of my favorite writers are Jesuits. I mean, not just Catholics, but Jesuits of all things. And my son ended up in an all-boys Catholic school. And I mean, Catholics party way better than Lutherans do too, So, I mean, I have to say, growing up, I didn't even know I knew any Catholics. Of course, the family down the street with 10 kids, it might have been a tip-off, but I didn't know. As far as I knew, the whole world was this little teeny tiny thing. And I needed to get an open mind. And it's when those little cracks come, it's like God gets the crowbar into that teeny little crack in my heart, and he helps me get it open. I needed my heart to be cracked open. Nobody has saved me from my brick walls, and I'm very grateful. I've picked a lot of mortar out of my teeth over the years, and I wouldn't be who I am today without it. That's what it means to not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. It doesn't mean I think it should have happened. I can accept it, not because it's God's will, or, you look at the other side and it's going to be something you just don't understand. I can't get on board with that. Don't tell me everything happens for a reason, because I have seen too many things that I cannot trust a God that's doing that. I can't. If you can, if it works for you, please don't stop doing it. But for this alcoholic, I believe that there is a difference between God's will and self-will, and step 10 really helps me to see that. That in that first real inventory, when I read my 5th step to my sponsor, and I'm talking about my dad, and, pulled me down the stairs by my hair, he ripped my clothes off in public, even when I had pubic hair, and these kind of horrific things. And I said, and what I did was I provoked him. And she said, time out. Absolutely not. There is nothing at all you could do to deserve that. That was him. The world and its people are often quite wrong, and there's a period there. Our question is, how are you using it today? How's it your get out of jail free card? How are you walking through the world as a victim, waiting for them to do it to you again? How are you keeping, you see, I had become the jailer. I was spending my life making sure he didn't get out of jail early. I wanted everybody to know what he had done. because somehow that was going to help me. No, all it did was it kept me in this dark, dingy, hopeless place, not living my life. They had more control than ever, and I wasn't even living with them. When I was in college, somebody asked me once, they said, why is it all you ever wear is black or white with smudges all over it? And I was like, well, it's because I'm an artist. No, it isn't. It wasn't. It was because things like the first dance I ever went to, my mother literally dressed me so. My mother loves garish clothes. And my first dance in junior high school, the top was a little brighter than this pink here. The bottom was purple. I don't see a good enough purple, brighter than any purple I see in the room, with a yellow wrap belt. And of course it came to just below my knees. Now everybody else is in a cute little black dress, or maybe a red one if you're really walking on the wild side, and they were all above the knees, and I'm 5'11" already, and you can't even see me sideways. And let's just say it was not a good look. And I never wanted to wear color. I just didn't. I bought my own prom dress, and I saved my money. I was the only one in the family. I worked all the time. I bought my own prom dress, and there was a senior party, and I bought a dress for that. And the senior party dress, I loved it so much. It had a sweetheart neckline. It's velvet. It's got a little bitty bit of rhinestone right here, you know, and it's just, but it came, I knew it was okay. It came right up below my knees, but it was so Audrey Hepburn. It was just elegant. Now, my mother didn't believe that one should wear black before 30, and certainly not to the senior party, for which I was, you know, whatever, a host because of whatever. And she came home with a pink marshmallowy dress, and it was literally this color, and it was spongy, and it was like Victor Costa, and it had a flip-up thing on the top, you know, it's like, and again, I'm the only one. Everybody else has these cute little dresses. And worse than that, she gave my dress to my sister to wear. I got resentments I didn't even know were resentments. My mother's picking out my clothes. And I didn't even know it. I am driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion. I think I'm wearing black because I'm an artist. But if you had asked me what my favorite color was back then, I couldn't have told you. I can tell you that it's actually the same one I had when I was a little kid, but it took me a while to even realize that I could have a favorite color because my mother took all the oxygen out of the room on that one. And I didn't know how to be free from that bondage of self, that I had handed her the remote control and that she was choosing the programming of my life even long after. And it's interesting, actually, after she died, I bought a lot of clothes with more color in it. It's very, very interesting that happened. But my point is, when I get to take this personal inventory, and that whenever I feel conflict, whenever I am disturbed, the problem is always me. It's always the redhead. It's never them. And it's not to say that they aren't wrong, but that's their business. My business is to get on with being happy, joyous, and free. My business is to take that remote control back and say, you know what? You actually don't have right of decision. I love the concepts. So, you know, if you go into a business meeting, right, and we're supposed to have a group conscience, right? Well, we're actually supposed to have an informed group conscience, which means, you know, it's not just what your opinion is, it's actually like experience, strength, and hope. Like, do you actually know what the heck is going on here? A great example of this was the first year of the MIT conference. It wasn't an MIT then, but the Freedom Trail Conference. It was originally part of my home group. Well, ish, anyway. And in order for them to take it on, I even made graphs. I did, it started off in MGH. And there was the coffee cart cafe thing closed for the weekend, which is a problem for an AA convention. So the way we got there was one of our Class A trustees, A for amateur, non-alcoholic, was at MGH at the time, and I had called him up, and he helped us get in the door there, and so he let us make our own coffee. So I go out and I've bought the big coffee urns, and I've got everybody who volunteered, everybody who needed a scholarship was volunteering. So I had all these people to help me make coffee. I've got all these coffee pots. The price of the ticket was based on 99% on coffee, because Bob D, who was my sponsor at the time, was the only speaker that weekend. And so we had to pay for his flight and his food and the coffee. And that was the price of the ticket. And a week before the conference, this woman, who is not on the conference committee, says, I don't think we should have coffee. And I was so flabbergasted, and they voted to not have coffee at the AA convention. And I had to go back and realize that I'd completely lost my voice in that moment. I was so astounded. And I had to go back and ask for, express a minority opinion, ask for redress, explain to them that they didn't have right of decision because they were not part of the conference committee. I showed them that, what am I going to do? Stand at the door and give people their money back? And where are they going to get coffee? Can you imagine? And, and all of these, here's what I've already done. And finding that voice to say, before it had actually gone destroyed, right? Before everybody's freaking out because there's not coffee, me going back and finding that ability to say, hang on. You guys you're not part of this group conscience because you aren't part of the conference committee. You have oversight, that's all. You don't get to micromanage us. That's not right. And fortunately, they voted in the coffee. Shocker. Of course, the woman who didn't want the coffee did resign because I always have to have my way. No, actually, I don't. But I will take a lot of heat for you. I can find my voice when I'm doing it for you. And by doing that, I found it for me. Because that's what we're talking, when I say it started off like clean up on aisle 7, I know a train wreck's coming. And I don't have to let that train hit. There is something I can do. There are things I can say. I need a whole lot of power to be able to find that inside of me. It's not my strength, it's God's through me. I'm just a channel. But you asked me to do this, and so I will because, I believe in Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe in the we of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe in the collective conscience of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe in those things, and I've practiced enough clean up on aisle 7 that I don't want to clean up her mess. It would be her mess, and she would not be there taking any responsibility. And responsibility and authority are supposed to be balanced. That's another concept. And if I give you right of decision, then that means that I trust you to go do your job. If you're the coffee maker, then, here's a better one. You guys offered to do the printing. Thank you very much. And I sent her the file, and she printed them. And she had right of decision to print them however she wanted to. She could have done them, what do you call it? Double-sided. But she chose not to. Like I said, I didn't tell her anything else. And she looked at it and she said, well, there are 2 sessions. And she made a decision which she had a right to make. Okay? She didn't, do anything wrong. She did well within her rights. And I was only surprised. That was all, not upset. Totally fine with me. I was thrilled she was willing to do the printing. I thought I was going to have to do the printing because I got it in so late. Thrilled. thank you for your service is the right answer, not you missed a spot. Well, how often do we say we missed it? Yeah, you missed a spot. That's why I started off saying, okay, so what don't you like? Why don't you join the committee? That's the right answer. Let me help. If you've got criticisms about stuff, let me help. What can I do? Right? So I get to evolve in this, and we become trusted servants. I'm going to trust you to make the best decision that you can, but not micromanage. I like to call it snoopervising. It's not my job to snoopervise, right? And you get to trust me, and I get to trust you. Mutual trust and respect. That's what we're going for. That's what the 10th step really helps me to build in my family. When my son was still, I don't know, 10 or 11, I guess, he started one summer building a treehouse. And he quit midway through. And I didn't make a big deal out of it. But the next summer, he really didn't want to do camp, and there were a lot of things, and he just didn't want to do. And I sat down with him, and I said, okay, listen, I'm not going to make you go do any of these things. However, you got to get outside some, because this is a kid who's either climbing a mountain or he's laying in bed. I mean, he's got on and he's got off. I mean, the kid is... so there was a big risk of him just being in bed all summer, And I said, well, what about your treehouse? And he said, yeah, Dad took that away. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's not my treehouse anymore because Dad started making all the decisions. Ah, I see. Okay, well, here's how it works. So here's the problem. You haven't taken physics, so you don't know about weight bearing and stuff like that. And nobody, especially not a 10-year-old, should be using power tools like, saws and things like that without supervision. So as long as you're doing things within, certain parameters, you can do it. Giving somebody right of decision also means you're going to trust them to come back when they need guidance. And it worked really well because when, he worked on the design, and then he came and he said, will you look at this? Is this going to be strong enough? Have I anchored it well? I mean, the kid's really smart. I was like, yeah, it looks great, actually. But when he was doing YouTube videos about chopping wood, oh my God, I'm sitting in the car just in case, because, and later on he did catch an axe in the forehead. I was not there at the time. And the person who should have been watching him was letting him do it in the dark. These are things that should not happen, right? But again, and he knew that he knew too that the guy had made him do some things that was dangerous, and he didn't have the voice to speak up about it. But I've tried to teach my children that they do have this inner compass. That's what this is. I am trying to develop this intuition, this sixth sense, this being able to be present here, awake and aware. Why didn't you go out with him for 3 years? Why did you keep saying no? Maybe you have to think about that again before you go out with him. Things like that. I have found every time, without fail, when something almost like really blows up, I knew beforehand. My mother died in August of 2019. We ended up having a really good relationship, as long as you don't try to quantify it as a mother-daughter relationship, because she's like a feral cat. I mean, and I don't mean that meanly, she just is. She has zero maternal instincts. She is all for one and one for all, meaning only her. She literally said up until her deathbed that she was more important than me. And she always believed those. That's how she acted. That's just how she was. She grew up in an alcoholic home. Nobody, not to mention, I never called her an alcoholic while she was alive, but let's just say all the signs are there. A few gallons of wine a week, things like that. She went to bed really early and smoked about 3 packs of cigarettes and 3 pots of coffee, meaning 30 cups of coffee a day. And she was smoking even more on oxygen. You know, she was not the most well person, but that doesn't mean that there was nothing good about her. And I decided to get to know her. Who is she? What is she interested in? Not to try to get her to be a mother, because that wasn't an option. I needed to give up on that idea. You know, this idea of the daughter, that role that I have, that I think should be cared for, I have other people to do that for me today. It didn't need to be her anymore. That's the beauty of it. And so I could see her for who she is. And she did some amazing things. She was the first female disc jockey in South Texas. She went on to have her own radio talk show. She went on to have her own television talk show. She got kicked off the air because she got pregnant, and you weren't allowed to be pregnant on television. She had 4 children. She never wanted any children. She wanted to get her tubes tied, but she had to have written consent from her husband, so she couldn't. That's the world my mother was in. She had a chip on her shoulder. Yeah, she did. You know, I mean, and she grew up in this alcoholic home. You know, she talked about being in the bar with her dad. You know, I mean, that's attention, right? So when I started to get to know who my parents actually were, when I went down to Brazil and I met the people who my father grew up with, and I heard the stories about when his brother died, how his mother was catatonic for several years, while my grandfather was off saving people's souls because he's a missionary, and he left her alone, and my father was out shooting pigeons with a slingshot so they had food to eat. He can braid hair as beautifully as you can. Not that he ever braided mine, but he took care of his sisters. He can whistle with a blade of grass. He can make a kite out of garbage. The man never got a childhood. He had one toy, one real toy. So it's not surprising that he became Peter Pan. And he never held down a real job, and all he thought about was playtime for himself. It's not surprising. And when he was fun, and when he isn't, he isn't. But expecting a man like that to be responsible is not reasonable. I mean, this man will punch a police officer. Well, he almost did once, actually. We never had a washing machine and dryer because why would you want a washing machine and dryer with 4 kids? Mom was at the laundromat, and Dad got into almost a fist fight with a police officer, and there were only 2 of us at the time. And the police officer dropped us off at the laundromat because he was taking my dad to jail because he just would not cease and desist. You know, those are the crazy people that I have. And when those are your benchmarks, right? I need a new yardstick because my ruler is all screwed up. And it's the 10th step that helped me to see differently. That my husband, and I'm saying bless your heart in a good way, bless his heart. I mean, he doesn't do things like not take care of himself. He doesn't miss breakfast or lunch. He doesn't, I mean, he has a healthy sense of self. Which is crazy because his mom was insane and lit herself on fire and survived that and eventually did stab herself to death. But you know, so we both have crazy families, and somehow we both got through it, and that's why he's the right guy for me, because his mother and my father, they're like twins, and his father and my mother, they're like twins. And he's the only person I have ever known who could see my parents with compassion and disdain when appropriate, and have, you know, a sense of self, and make sure that he was doing first things first, and not lose himself with I had a lot to learn from him, because with these kids with all their allergies, you know, like I'm making their breakfast and he's having his breakfast, and everybody thought that I just didn't eat breakfast, but I had to wait till the kids were in school because I'm with an EpiPen in the middle. And when I finally pointed it out to him, guess what? He started making breakfast for me. I thought he didn't care. But he just assumed if I was hungry, I would eat. Who knew? When you're hungry, you should eat. I wasn't raised that way. David does that. And it's simple things like that I begin to wake up to when I'm willing to do these simple things, right? Practicing these one verbs at a time. First, just watch. Just watch. How much is going on? Not just watching me, but also watching you, watching God, watching, catching and being good is the others. It's not all bad. It is not self-flagellation. That's how I got down the road with Lutherans, sorry. So the Lutherans were really big on self-flagellation, hitting their backs with, big ropey, knotted, whatever, And that's where I got the idea that I should be beating myself up. That I'm just going to literally beat the hell out of myself. That somehow it would purge that negative if I hurt myself enough. I didn't learn how to value me. I remember going to my dad one summer and my feet were really hurting because my shoes were way too small. And he looked at me and he said, well, give me your shoes. And he cut the toes off. And those were my shoes, So how do I find that value? How do I see me as God's child too? And I remember my sponsor saying, you're just the hired help. You're just the nanny. You abandoned yourself to God. Arisa is God's kid. And you've just been hired to take care of her. That's it. And I had been a nanny. And I took good care of the kids that I nannied for. I would never have let them skip a meal. I wouldn't have let them run around the zoo without holding their hands. I wouldn't have treated them the way I treated me for anything. And just mutual trust and respect, even for me, that I'm part of that all, is really part of it. Just first seeing that I'm not being nice to me, including sitting back, popping the popcorn, and watching the movie of what he did to me again so that I feel like garbage. That was a big part of it. Some of the worst abuse I ever did to myself. Didn't know I had the ability to not do that, to catch myself, to not drift into remorse and morbid reflection. I enjoy remorse and morbid reflection. That's twisted, right? Most people want to move on, but how? We get so stuck. These things are sticky. They tell me it's who I am, but it isn't. I need to let God tell me who I am. And that's waking up this inner compass, right? So we continue to set right any new mistakes. What a beautiful, when we talked last night about what a mistake is, all of a sudden I can feel the tenderness. The tenderness. My children make mistakes. But they are trying. And if they are trying and they are falling, I don't want to rub their nose in it. Every dog trainer knows rubbing the dog's nose in its crap will not keep it from crapping in the house. You give them a cookie. There's a really bad movie, but it's really funny. It's like poorly done, but very apt. It's called How to Train Your Dog, but it is slashed out and it says husband. And because it's kind of basically every dog trainer says, you don't train dogs, you train people, you train the owners. And I needed to learn how to teach people how to treat me. The last time my dad came at me, I was in my parents' dining room and I knew what was going to happen. I could feel what was going to happen. It had nothing to do with me. He just came in, and from the time I was little, I could tell what was going to happen. And he was coming towards me, and I put my hand on a big crystal bowl, and I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, if you lay a hand on me, I will call the police, and I will press charges. And I was 2 years sober. And that is the last time my father has ever threatened me. Because I am not a woman who you can do that to anymore. Because I've had a spiritual awakening, because I am not a victim anymore, because he doesn't have the right to do that, and because if he does, I will do what I should to take care of God's precious little girl. Because she deserves mutual trust and respect. That's the new pair of glasses. That's what this is about. It's great if you're at the place where all you're doing is, I just lied, and you, my starter sponsor, oh, she was a liar. She's such a great liar. By that I mean that she was aware of the fact that she was such a great liar. And she'd be standing there talking to you, and she'd say whatever it was she said, and then she'd look at you, and she'd go, I just lied to you. What I really have to say is blah, 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 right? We're the only people in the world that but instead of honesty, we need rigorous honesty, because we don't understand that honesty is rigorous. Like Alcoholics Anonymous is not shades of gray. You hear about shades of gray a lot. That comes from therapy. Alcoholics Anonymous is black and white. God is either everything or he's nothing. There's either light or there isn't. You're either in or you're out. The last decision we make is that second step proposition. God is either everything or he's nothing. Do you live in a hostile or a friendly universe? Which is it? And if it's friendly, then what I have to do is I have to try to find compassion instead of condemnation. That doesn't mean letting you off the hook. I want to be really clear, because this is where I got really screwed up, because I didn't want to forgive my father, because that meant he got out of jail free. No, it didn't. The forgiveness is not for him. In fact, it's not me he owes. I forgive him so that I get out of jail. The forgiveness is for me. I take the remote control back so he can't push my buttons anymore. My mother's not picking out my clothes anymore because I forgave her. But you see, she's still on the hook with God. I let the results of what they do judge them. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, what I did to punish myself for the things that I disagreed with that I did was awful. The way I felt about myself was worse punishment than any beating my father ever gave me. And so I will let him be his own judge and jury. I would rather do that and have the life that I have today. I want to be on the road of happy destiny. I want to learn how to trudge. And we think trudge isn't a bad word, but it means to walk with determination. It means stay on the yellow brick road, because when you don't, there are flying monkeys. That's where the poppies are. That's where all the problems. Every time she gets off the yellow brick road, something bad happens. We've got this wonderful road. Am I willing to pay attention to when I'm off of it? Because anytime I'm not on it, I am disturbed. And it is a divine disturbance. I should be disturbed. When I am driving, I should be scared. You know why? Because I like to drive into brick walls. And when I get scared like that, this is metaphorical, just saying, it's time to pull the car to the edge of the road, get out, pop the trunk, let God out, hand him the keys, and get in the passenger seat. Please, God, take my life. Because if I don't do that, there's a knock on my door in the morning if I don't do upon awakening. And that knock is fear. And fear sounds like this. Good morning, ma'am. I'm here to drive your ass today. And I will be driven. And I will go places without my agreement, behind my own back, wondering why it keeps happening to me. And I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me. I mean, I don't even know how many times I've had stalkers and stuff. And all of a sudden, one year, all of a sudden, shocker, it stopped. And it's not because I got old. Because this was before I even met my husband. It stopped before I even met my husband. It stopped in between not marrying my sister's husband and meeting my husband. It stopped when I decided I had no more opinions about anything, that it was not my life, that when I did the third step the first time, I didn't realize I'd made a fundamental mistake. I thought God was going to fix my life. Oops, that's not what it is. It says God gets my life. It's not my life anymore. It's not my life. Where do you want me? But I don't want to sit on the sidelines. I want to be in the game. Show me what can I do? Put me in service. You know, if I put my focus on you, I have a beautiful life. I can be here with a migraine, with my back hurting, with all this stuff going on, and you are lifting me up. I don't know if you're getting anything out of this, but I am. You know, I need you. I need a whole lot of God or a whole lot of booze. That's my truth. And this 10th step helps me to stay with that all through the day. Are you holding God's hand? Are you holding God's hand? Did you come up with some touchstones? What have you got going on in your life to remind you? You know, my sponsor used to say, pray to be, I forget to pray. It's really hard to remember to pray. And she would say, well, pray to be reminded to pray. And I took eyeliner. I had the crayon eyeliners, you know, and I would write on the mirrors. And I would put sticky notes all over the place. These were some of my touchstones, you know, and then it was, put your keys under your bed. Now I tell people to put their phone under the bed, right? And put their keys under some other piece of furniture. So if you miss the first one, you know, you got a second chance before you leave. But you just taking a moment, like, are you walking with God? That's inventory. Are you holding God's hand? That's inventory. That inventory is so much more important than there's a mess on the floor. I need to sweep it up and make amends. Real amends is doing it differently. You know, staring at my character defects and pretending to work on them doesn't work. What does work is getting into amends and saying, you know, doing it differently, not saying something, but doing it differently. What am I doing differently? So if I want to stop having the messes on the floor, I need to be connected to God. And it grows from there. I'm not saying that cleanup on aisle 7 is not important. It is. Do not skip that part. But it's more than that. And it becomes joyful. That's the joy in the journey. That when I also catch myself being good. I get astounded sometimes. You know, that I got to be honest, when I got sober, I thought I had the most boring story and nobody would ever want to hear me have anything to say. And so it's really kind of shocking when people say, would you come and, you know, do, and, you know, I felt so inconsequential. I didn't feel like I had experience, strength, or hope to share because I didn't at first. But it's through the falling down and getting up, and the falling down and getting up, and the falling down and getting up. I have a lot of experience with the spiritual 2x4s to the back of the head. You know, if you want to know how to suit up and show up when life, I don't know how to help you get what you want, but I know how to find peace and joy no matter what comes your way. My God is the God of lemonade. Everybody gets lemons, but only some of us decide to squeeze those puppies and let God put the sugar in. I'll end with this. I think I'm close. So when I was in graduate school, and she's dating him, right? Well, actually, she's just now married him at this point. And they were the only two people I knew in New York. And I'm living in a room that's 8.5 feet by 11, which is about half the size of what we got down the hall, right, maybe? And that included the closet, and the bathroom was down the hall, and this is much nicer than where I live. And when you're working on a Master's of Fine Arts, you spend 2 years to put an art show together. And I've been working with fire this whole time, and I've got this show, and it's supposed to go up in September. And I just met David not that much long. I came up to Massachusetts. Man, Massachusetts. Anyway, I was in Massachusetts for the 4th of July, and somebody shot a bottle rocket through the window, and all of my smoke paintings burned up. Gone. 2 years worth of work. Gone. I was the chief prime suspect, except I was out of state and I could prove it, so I had a good alibi. And it was just kids. It was just kids. It was not arson on purpose. It was just kids. It's Harlem, you know? Fires happen. And when I walked into that room, because it was an old stone abbey, so the building was fine. It had these big fire doors. It was just the 20 of us in this studio. We lost everything, right? They let us go in to see if there was anything salvageable. It was anyway, it was the coolest thing ever. I walked in the room with another member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said, you know this didn't happen to you. And it did. I knew that fires just happened. It wasn't about me. Not only that, but for a woman who works with fire, you could see where the bottle rocket came in, which window it was. You could see the trail up the ceiling and how it spread and where it went. And the light fixtures were kind of, remember the ones that used to have, they weren't colorly covered, they were like cross-section like that? They're dripping down like fingers. And the clock, straight out of a Salvador Dali painting. It was so cool. It was awesome. In the true sense of the word awesome. I mean, I had been painting with smoke, with fire, with open flames, okay? This is my medium. I still work with it. And it was like God going, hey, kid, that was your idea. Look at mine. And my classmates were all traumatized. I wasn't. I was inspired. I couldn't wait to get into a studio. They gave me the old teacher's lounge that nobody used. So I jerry-rigged a 2x4, because smoke rises, so you have to above your head. So I've got these, 2x4s jerry-rigged into the I-beam. And there was one wooden canvas that the smoke had ruined the front, but the canvas was okay. And the wood it was the only thing, because it was behind a piece of metal. It was the only thing I had left. And getting supplies from Canal Street to Harlem is not easy. So I have one canvas, and I string it up in this jerry-rigged fashion in this, in this old teacher's lounge, and I start working on it. And one of the 2x4 slips goes through the middle of the painting and whacks me in the head. Now I've got a goose egg in the middle of my head and a hole in the canvas. So I drip wax on the canvas for the first time ever to seal the hole, because I don't have another painting. Now, see, I never give up on a painting. This is important because it's all about spiritual alchemy, which we'll get to later. But that painting is so beautiful. It hangs in my daughter's room now. And my work, it changed. It got I would have had to work for 20 years to get to where I was with that. And when I was done, about a week later, I'm looking at this painting. It looks just like a phoenix. And I titled the show Phoenix. And somebody switched with me, and I was given one extra month. I'm the only person who graduated on time. Because a problem plus me is misery, but a problem plus God is an opportunity. Let's have lunch?